Holy City Center Radio. It is episode 150, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023. Monday. Another week here in the Holy City. Let's hope it's a good one, and I hope you had an awesome weekend. Mine was pretty good. On Friday, as I mentioned in the last episode, I went to the Gilliard Center to see Alana Glazer. And for those who don't know her, she's an actress, comedian, probably best known for the show Broad City, which used to air on Comedy Central. And it was first time ever seeing her live. I don't know if she's ever performed in Charleston before. I don't believe so, because I think her doing stand-up, as far as a big national tour, took off after Broad City started. And even then, I don't think she did extensive tours. So it was cool to see her live. I had really good tickets. And it was fun. The opener was pretty good as well. He kind of started off, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I really like this kind of persona he was coming with. But then after, a couple jokes, I was like, oh, okay, all right. I kind of settled in and was really enjoying it. And then, Alana was really, really funny. The crowd seemed to be into it. It was pretty packed in there too. I wasn't sure what to expect, as far as a crowd. And it was, probably not a sellout, but it was packed. It looked pretty close to it if it wasn't. And everybody was into it. It was fun. It was a good show, and the crowd was great, and it was nice. I love stand-up comedy. It's just nice to get out and just laugh and have fun. And yeah, it was great. Other than that, pretty much laid low all weekend. Nothing really exciting to report on. Did a lot of work, a lot of catching up on things, as I've been busy with some other things, including my other job. So getting a little behind on Holy City Center stuff. So the rest of the weekend was kind of playing catch up on all that as we get ready for this new week here. So again, I hope you had a great weekend. Let's hope this week itself is pretty good. It is still hot in Charleston, so stay cool out there. I know we've had some storms, periodically, but even the storms don't seem to last super long. It's right back to this heat, so stay cool out there. But now let's get into the news. Police in South Carolina are currently investigating whether Gilgo Beach murder suspect Rex Heuermann may have been involved in the 2014 disappearance of a teenager. Authorities confirmed this to ABC News this past Thursday. So, quick catch up here. If you aren't familiar with this case, there are a series of murders that took place in Long Island, in New York, of course, at a place called Gilgo Beach. There's been, I don't know if they're documentaries or, things like, I can't remember. I know I've seen this case on numerous shows. I can't remember if it was like a documentary specifically about the case or if it was like a Dateline or 2020 or all of the above. But I've seen this story before, and I think I've even heard podcasts talk about it as well. But yes, a series of murders that has gone unsolved for several years. And there was recently a break in that case, and they arrested this man, Rex Heuermann. So that's kind of the background on it. And if you're into true crime and mysteries and stuff, it's a case that you would probably want to go look into further. But we learned shortly after his arrest that he actually owned some property in South Carolina. So now, of course, because he's a suspect, police are starting to wonder, okay, did he commit other murders or other crimes in any other states, especially states where, like here, he has some property? So they're looking into, if that could potentially be the case. And specifically, they're looking at this disappearance of an 18-year-old named Aaliyah Bell. She vanished in November of 2014 in Rock Hill. And Rock Hill is about 20 miles from some vacant lots that have been associated with Heuermann, and police have actually been searching those in connection with the Gilgo Beach case, whether it's to find evidence that ties him to those murders in New York or, maybe potentially some crimes here in South Carolina or somewhere else. So far, there has been no indication, according to police, that Heuermann is a suspect at all in this, South Carolina case, but they're looking into it and said they would continue to investigate Bell's disappearance and follow up on all tips and leads that they get, whether it's related to Heuermann or not. So, as I mentioned, unsolved murders or missing persons cases around the nation are now getting a second look, a week after this guy's arrest and by the way, he was arrested officially for the murders of 3 young women whose burlap wrapped bodies were found along Gilgo Beach. So There's actually some other unsolved cases from that area. They've tied him to these three. They think they may be more. And as I said, they're now looking into everything, seeing if they can find any evidence that he was involved in any other unsolved murders or missing persons cases. So was weird to find out that there was a tie to South Carolina in this case. Might be nothing. He might have just had property here, and it had nothing to do with any crimes. He didn't have any evidence there. But I'll be sure to keep you updated if any of those ties come back, or if there's any other South Carolina connections related to this case. A sad, even if expected, update out of Pennsylvania on a story about a South Carolina family that was caught in flash flooding up there last week. On Friday evening, there was an update. And like I said, although it was expected at this point, still, sad to have the official word, as officials in Pennsylvania say they believe they have found the body of 2-year-old Maddie Shields. In a press conference, officials said they found the body in the Delaware River, about 32 miles away from where the Shields family ran into trouble with flash flooding. Additionally, officials have said that based on the description of the child and the clothing that she was wearing, it leads them to believe that they indeed have found Maddie. It's pending an autopsy, and official word will come down eventually. Sadly, her 9-month-old brother Conrad is still missing. Officials plan to continue looking for him, as we move forward. So you may remember I talked about this, I think, on Friday's episode. The Charleston family was visiting relatives in Pennsylvania when they were caught in a flash flood. This happened, I think, 2 weeks ago now. Their mother, Katie Seeley, died in that flooding, and now it appears Maddie did as well. And unfortunately, the expectation is that Conrad likely did, although they are still searching and, again, hoping against everything that somehow he will be found alive. The family, it wasn't just these three. The child's father, they also have a 4-year-old brother and a grandmother, all managed to escape the flash flooding. So there is that good news that some members were saved, but obviously still a horrific tragedy. There is a GoFundMe that was set up for the family. I think I mentioned that as well in the last show. If you're interested in helping, there's a link in the show notes to this story. And then within that story is the GoFundMe link. As of this recording, that account that was set up for them has already surpassed $239,000, and I'm sure it's just going to keep increasing from there. It's been more than 8 years after the tragic Emanuel Nine shooting here in the city of Charleston, and this past weekend, they broke ground on a memorial that's been planned for several years. On Saturday, dozens gathered to honor those who died in the tragedy and also those who survived, as the church broke ground on the memorial while also dedicating the 115-year-old restored pipe organ that they call Big Bertha. I think I mentioned in previous episodes about both of these. But yes, they had a very old organ that needed some upkeep and some improvements, and they were able to do that. And so they unveiled that this past weekend, as well as breaking ground on the planned memorial. The Mother Emanuel Memorial will have two parts: the Survivors Garden and the Fellowship Benchers. They're called. It's not a traditional bench; it's part of a design, and they will be placed around a marble fountain where the names of the Emanuel Nine will be engraved. The Emanuel Nine Memorial will be located on the grounds of the Mother Emanuel AME Church, and will provide updates, of course, as construction continues on that and when it eventually opens. You had to assume there was going to be some drama with Charleston County School District's Board of Trustees and the newly hired superintendent. You have a group of Moms for Liberty backed candidates who have already, caused waves, and we've talked about that here on the podcast. And then when the district was coming down to, get their final list of candidates for the new superintendent, it, you know, leaked online, I guess purposefully was put out online by someone, which led to some candidates withdrawing their names from the search, and ultimately led to the hiring of Eric Gallion. And of course, some people in that group, specifically the Moms for Liberty candidates, took exception. They didn't think that because of everything that had happened, that they should just go with Gallion, even if he would have been the choice anyway. So you figured there was going to be some headbutting as we move forward. I mean, there already was before he was even hired. And lo and behold, It's already begun. The Charleston County School District Board of Trustees voted on Friday afternoon in a special session to reject two of Superintendent Dr. Eric Gallien's position appointments. So he had requested the board approve an interim chief of schools and an interim executive director of elementary schools. Both motions were rejected on a vote. Both votes were 5-4, with the Moms for Liberty group candidates being the ones who voted to reject the appointments. For those who aren't familiar with Moms for Liberty, they say they are a pro-parent group. They're conservative, and they really rose to prominence during the pandemic on the backs of being upset about mask mandates, and really that was the gist of it. But then they also have kind of spun to all other cultural issues as far as banning books and being against LGBTQ issues being taught in school, and the stuff we talk about all the time on this podcast, and you are probably tired of hearing on this show and everywhere in the country. So in any event, they voted against both of his appointments. Following that decision to reject them, Dr. Gallien spoke to the board, saying that he viewed the outcome as disheartening and an inappropriate way to begin his relationship with them. He was obviously very disappointed. During the special session itself, Courtney Waters, who is a county board district, who represents District 4 on the county board, questioned why they were even having this special session following a Monday vote that allowed Dr. Gallien to make appointments as necessary. So her argument was, well, why are we even doing this? We previously voted that he's allowed to make appointments, so why are we getting involved in this at all? The other folks who voted to approve his appointments voiced similar concerns and also said that this, besides the fact that these are interim positions, so even if he brought on people and the board wasn't happy with their work, they were meant to be interim. They weren't necessarily going to be the ones that would be hired. They could easily, decide to not approve them for a permanent position later if that's what was suggested, or bring up, or make sure they hire a candidate that they approve. So they didn't really know why they were even voting on that for these two reasons. Plus, they also viewed one of the positions as something that was below the purview of the board itself. On the opposite side, Pamela McKinney, who is the Board of Trustees chair, explained that due to a May 18th motion that states the superintendents cannot hire anyone without approval by the board was not rescinded, the special session was necessary and they had to vote on these positions. So her assertion was that May 18th, there was a motion that said, superintendents cannot hire anyone without approval. As far as she saw, this has not been rescinded in any way. So in her eyes, any kind of hire needed to go through the board. Even if that's the case, no surprise they rejected the two people he wanted. As I said, we can expect more of this going forward, where they're going to be butting heads because these Moms for Liberty backed candidates didn't want him there in the first place, or so it would seem. And yeah, so no surprise here. Two interim positions are being debated and argued and then ultimately rejected. We could, like I said, you can expect more of this going forward with just about any decision involving, really the schools, period, but certainly the new superintendent. He certainly does not seem to have the trust of these, these five candidates. Well, I guess I shouldn't call them candidates anymore. They're actually on the board members. He doesn't have the trust of them, and he hasn't even started yet. He hasn't even implemented anything yet, and they're already rejecting and hindering him in that process. So, like I said, expect more of this going forward. So that'll do it for this episode of Holy City Center Radio, episode 150. We got 150 of these now in the books. That's ridiculous. I'm so sorry for those of you who have to listen to me for any number of episodes, but especially anyone who has done all 150, which I'd be surprised if anyone has, but cheers to you if you did. I joke, but I appreciate your support. I enjoy doing the podcast, and it's been fun to do all 150 episodes for you all. It's been a nice ride so far, and excited for the next 150, hopefully. Also, a thank you to Cole Collins with LMC Sound System, who produces each episode of Holy City Center Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode as well. If you want to support the podcast, go to holycitycenter.com/shop, and you can pick up some merchandise, or go to patreon.com/holycitycenter and sign up for one of those support tiers. You can also help the podcast for free by subscribing on whatever streaming platform you're listening on, or rating, reviewing, really anything that you can interact with the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. That will help get this podcast in other people's ears, move it up the algorithm. So, you don't have to pay me anything to support. You can do things like that. That also helps out. And I really, really appreciate anyone who has done that or is going to do it now. I will talk to you all again on Wednesday with the latest news here in the Charleston area and beyond. I'm looking forward to it already. But until then, good night and good luck.